We're very excited to have Niki Harré as our closing keynote today. Those of you who know Niki know that she is somewhat of a delightful enigma. You can read her bio and accomplishments and all that stuff on the website, and certainly buy her book. Check out her YouTube videos, they're excellent. But when I asked Niki what she wanted in an introduction from me, she challenged me with, do it in a song, a haiku, or an interpretive dance, or some combination thereof. So you can imagine what I chose to do for you. Actually, she's got some singing, so I'm going to go ahead and do the haiku. Activist mother, cycles climate 3 children, youth, guitar, garden. Welcome, Niki Harré.
Great, it's wonderful to be here. Is my voice coming through okay? I've just got my timer here, so I'm not checking my text messages during the talk, but I want to make sure that I go for my 45 minutes and no longer. So it's an incredible honour and privilege to be with you here today. And what I thought I'd do, having given it quite a lot of thought, is that I'd take you through a little narrative of some of the things I've been thinking about over the last few years. And in particular, try and convince you of the need to bring metaphors and symbols back into psychology and back into our world. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about finite and infinite games. That's the second half of the talk. Some of you have received a little paper dart. Please hold on to that because we will be playing a game in a while. So, as Todd said to you, about 18 months ago, nearly 2 years ago now, I released a book called Psychology for a Better World, Strategies to Inspire Sustainability. And I wanted maximum accessibility for the book. So it was published by my department, which meant nobody needed to make any money. It's free to download as well, and as Scott implied, we made a YouTube video, some ex-students and I, with animations to even increase the accessibility of the ideas in it. And over the last 18 months, I've been invited to do over 60 talks and workshops in New Zealand to various groups. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what those talks and workshops have taught me and why they've got me into this idea of metaphor and symbols. So the kinds of groups that I've been talking to are environmental groups, youth climate change activist groups, 350.org, Generation Zero, some academic groups, health promotion, city councils, 3 or 4 different groups within Auckland City Council, one political party, guess which one, the Green Party, environmental managers of large corporations, unions, school teacher groups, people into education for sustainability, and school students as well. And in both my talks and the book and the YouTube clip, what I was really keen to do is bring insights from academic psychology to people out there making positive social change. In specifically people doing sustainability work, but people doing any kind of sort of positive work for the future for us all. And so I was trying to speak to the converted. And what I was hoping to do with the converted was give them an alternative or a tweak on how they saw things, to empower them to inspire others to become part of whatever cause it was that they were offering. I really wanted my book to be part of a deep democratic process. I didn't want to change people's behaviour, but I wanted to be part of conversation and practice about the kind of world that we could all live in, this vision for a different kind of future which would allow a flourishing planet and flourishing people. So with this in mind, my talk had these 4 key themes that I'm going to give you just a 2-minute version of today. I start with this fabulous bird, the godwit, or to use its indigenous Māori name, the kuaka. Now the kuaka flies from the Arctic Circle to New Zealand each year, a distance of nearly 10,000 kilometres, and it does it by doing 2 things. First of all, before it sets off, it eats a lot, so it's well nourished and ready with all those nutrients for the journey. And the second thing is it actually waits for the correct winds in order to launch itself across the hemispheres. So the lesson in the kuaka is sometimes we have to bide our time. We have to gather the people around us, the skills, values, all those things we need. And then we can actually find our way along those wind currents. We don't have to overcome barriers. I don't talk about barriers, forget about them. Look for those opportunities in wind currents. Second key idea, mostly from positive psychology. My books are on neuroscience, developmental, community, positive, social, anthropology, all sorts of different things. And the idea here is that people actually attracted towards happiness, towards joy, towards interest, towards full body engagement in things. We want to thrive. We're attracted to that just the way in which moths are attracted to a flame. So the lesson is, if you want people to join your movement and be inspired by you, you have to offer something that nourishes them, that attracts them, that fulfills something deep inside them. I also think there's really interesting research on how positivity brings out creativity, cooperation and openness to change, but you'd have to read the book. My third key theme is how deeply and inherently social people are. Something that I think is not often appreciated out there in the wide world, that we are born imitators. And in many ways, I think the reason why business as usual continues, at least the proximate cause of it, is because we're in an imitation cycle, kind of looking to each other and copying each other, and so it goes on. This is partly in behaviour, it's partly in language, it's partly in stories, it's partly in myths and metaphors. Finally, I talk about fascinating research on children's moral development, which suggests that as children are growing up and learning how to be people, they figure out that there are two things you need for a social group to work really well. One is fairness. Anybody that works with children knows just how obsessed they are with fairness. And it's a pretty straightforward kind of fairness. They mean equal distribution of stuff. The second is protecting innocent others. Now, one of the things I realised as I was doing these talks is that when they went well, they were much more than the sum of the parts. I felt as if I was able to be part of, generate, sounds a bit kind of egotistical, but whatever, a sort of atmosphere in which I was offering people the opportunity to live joyous, fulfilled, rich human lives while also working for social change. And a lot of the people I talked to were really worried about things like climate change, aren't we all? A lot of the people were infuriated by wealth inequities. But what I tried to say to them is you're still entitled to have a life. You're still entitled to be a human being doing those things that human beings want to do. And you can work for social change. And they're not contradictory. They can actually complement each other. And so this got me really thinking about types of knowledge in psychology in particular, and what we can offer to people. Because remember, people come to us because they want to learn about themselves and how to be a person. And sometimes we kind of forget that in all of the study that we do. So one of the first kinds of knowledge is intellectual knowledge, and we are all very, very familiar with this. It's the key thing of intellectual knowledge is you want to describe things precisely and unambiguously, so a person sitting here could interpret it exactly the same way as a person sitting back at home in Auckland or in Nigeria or in China or wherever. And part of the reasons that numbers are so popular within the intellectual side of knowing is because of their precision. Of course, we all know it's a bit of an illusion, but it looks like sort of unambiguous knowledge. You don't need a living, feeling, breathing human being to interpret it. That's the whole point. The second type of knowledge is practice knowledge. And I know for many of us, the reasons that we are attracted to community psychology is because, unlike a lot of other branches of psychology, we get this. We know that there's a kind of knowledge that comes in doing, an embodied knowledge. If you play the guitar, you can't tell someone how to do it, you have to practice it. If you're working with community organisations, you learn to run meetings, you learn to bring out people who are shy, you learn to evolve sort of democratic processes, you learn to do program evaluations. All of those are embodied actions in doing, they're practice knowledge, which we are very good at. The third kind of knowledge, which I think even us, fabulous as we are, have possibly neglected, and I just need to get to my notes at this point, is metaphorical knowledge. Now, metaphorical knowledge can be contrasted with intellectual knowledge by one simple principle. Whereas intellectual knowledge tries to drive all ambiguity out of what it's saying. Metaphorical knowledge thrives on ambiguity. What metaphors do is they offer us a picture, a glimpse, a way of seeing the world that requires a living human being to interpret it, because that kind of knowledge is always an interaction between the symbol and the interpreter. And many of us have our favourite metaphors and ideas and symbols and songs and poetry, and we read them differently each day. And that's the whole purpose of a metaphor. Now, metaphorical knowledge, of course, within psychology its roots are in things like psychoanalysis, Freud, Jung, more recently people like James Hillman. They're the hotbeds, what we these days seem to call depth psychology. And it does exist within community psychology, but only in teeny little doses. And I was talking to somebody about, I was talking how I was going to do it, and I said, I'm going to refer to Julian Rappapport's wonderful metaphor, Tales of Terror and Tales of Joy, written about those and used those a lot. And she said, what are those? And I said, well, some people have before them a tale of terror, some groups in particular, where they see their life working out not so well. And they might live into that because the narrative pulls them forward. And some people have a tale of joy before them, positive ideas that they can draw to. And I said, for example, in New Zealand, Māori youth, through the media, have this tale of terror. They're going to be in prison, they're going to get pregnant young, they're going to not get school qualifications, blah, blah. She immediately said, no, that's not right, she said. Māori youth see a tale of joy before them. She said, they feel empowered and active. And I said, there we go. That's what a metaphor does. Instantly, she and I could talk about Māori youth through this metaphor, without me going on for hours and hours and defining it and making it precise, but we were engaged in a conversation. So metaphors are extremely important, and I got really, really interested in them through this feeling in my talks that there was something kind of needed to bring us together that was in the atmosphere. So I started reading about religion and religious scholars, and found that I think is one of the hotbeds of metaphor today. People like James Carse, Mark Taylor, Karen Armstrong, Joseph Campbell, really important people in this field. And of course, outside scholarship, we're doing metaphors within poetry, art, dance, film, all of those kind of venues, but also really importantly through things like political discourse, through the way in which we talk to each other. There are metaphors in the ether. I'm just going to check my timing, and somebody's going to be, this is me looking at my, yep, good, great, you're going well. Okay, so I'm going to now start to talk about metaphors, which is the real core of the talk. And good metaphors do three things. The first thing they do is that they're maps of who we are. So metaphors have to resonate with our hopes, dreams, fears, struggles, and so on. In particular, I think they have to make sense of two elements of ourselves, our suffering and our hope. And I don't know if anybody recognises this, but this is the demon Kirti Tumaka. And the story goes, the great god Shiva, it's a Hindu demon, told this demon to eat himself, for complicated reasons that I won't go into to do with him fancying Shiva's wife and so on. But anyway, and he agreed. So he ate his arms, he ate his legs, he ate his body. And then all that was left was his head. So Shiva said that his head would go on every Hindu temple to remind people that life is suffering. But in the end, we're all going to be devoured by our life forms, and we may as well get used to it. So when you see that, it reminds you that we're all suffering in this life, that we're all mortal and fragile and all the rest of it. So myths have to speak to us, particularly to our suffering and to our hope. I'll be talking more about hope later. Now, I need to go back. Okay, what's the second thing they do? They have to give us maps of our world, maps of ourselves, maps of our world. They have to speak to what we see around us, socially, physically. They have to make sense of it. The third thing that good myths or metaphors or symbols have to do is they have to be a GPS. They have to tell us what to do. Science, of course, is hopeless at that. Even as community psychologists, we're a bit reluctant now to be telling people what to do. It's kind of not really how you do it. But myths, whoops, they just go out there and say, this is who you are, this is how the world is, and this is how you be. And they're not doing it in an aggressive way, they're doing it in this enticing, never quite grabbed hold of way that metaphors do. Now, myths, very importantly, need to fit the time. They need to capture our imagination. They need to fit the time. They need to be something that we feel is right for us. And I suggest, as many others have suggested too, that we're in a time of changing myths and metaphors, that we need different ways of seeing ourselves and the world and a GPS, how we act. The great religious myths and metaphors, I've been atheist all my life, but I enjoy religion because I like those stories. But they're never going to work. They're never going to work because they've become politicized. Because a Christian just will not say, okay, I agree to take one of these other symbols as my main guidance. It's not going to work. We all in this room probably agree that the old myth of free market, economic growth, got lots of cracks, right? Yes, right. There was a day when the idea of free markets and capitalism were liberating, empowering, when they offered equity and opportunity and breaking through. But now we identify them with holding on to power structures. They don't do what they used to do. That myth is over as a unifying way forward. Another set of myths that I think is really interesting, but still not quite right, is the Mother Earth concept. Working in the kind of ecological field, I hear a lot of this. In Māori mythology, we have Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother, and one of her children is Tane Mahuta, the god of the forest. So in the Māori worldview, way back when, 600 or 700 years ago, you were walking around a natural environment with Tane Mahuta all around you, and everything was animated with a spirit, and you were engaging with that spirit in your daily life. So that myth really worked, because it gave you a GPS, it gave you a map of your world. But that's not going to work now. Where's Tane Mahuta? Where's Papatuanuku? I don't see them here. We're in a built human environment, and we need to understand the world that we live in. So this is where I get to the infinite game. Now, in all of my readings, I actually came across the infinite game, and I knew that I was hooked. I have been ever since, so now I'm going to try and convert you. Sorry, fiddling around with my paper is not really very good, but I'm sure you'd rather I was coherent than didn't fiddle around with my paper. Okay. So, this comes from the work of James Carse, who suggested there are at least two kinds of games in life, the infinite game and finite games. The purpose of the infinite game is to continue the game. The purpose of finite games is to win. The infinite game invites others in. Finite games include only select people. In the infinite game, any single player is not needed and cannot finish the game. In finite games, each player is needed and must always be alert to relax is dangerous. The infinite game looks to the future and does not assume that the past will reoccur. In the finite game, players will try to replicate the winning strategies of the past. In the infinite game, the rules must change or the game will cease. In fact, if an infinite player senses somebody is about to lose, they try and change the rules to ensure that they don't. In finite games, the rules must not change for the duration of the game. The infinite game provokes creativity, finite games provoke replication. Infinite games and players have horizons that they move as the player moves. Finite games are always bounded by time and space and other dimensions. Now, this is a kind of paraphrasing, and there's a bit of me in there and so on. James Carse's original idea, though. So I want to just take you quickly through a game of beach cricket and a game of test cricket. Kind of know what cricket is. You know, you hit a ball and there's wickets and stuff. I'm not sure if you play it here, but anyway, you know what it is. To try and just illustrate this a little bit further, I'm just going to have another look at my time. Okay, great. Okay, so test cricket, let's imagine the game between Australia and New Zealand, right? That's your finite game. Beach cricket, you get a piece of driftwood, go down to the beach, maybe you're all camping together, someone's got a tennis ball, set up a wicket maybe with another piece of driftwood, you start to play. So when we're playing test cricket, of course the purpose is to win. When we're playing beach cricket, the purpose is to continue the game until the tide comes in, or there's too many mosquitoes, or everyone's hungry, or whatever. In the infinite game, everybody's welcome in beach cricket. Whoever's on the beach, come and play, come and play. It doesn't matter what you can do, what your capabilities are. Whereas, of course, I don't think I'd qualify for the New Zealand Test cricket team. Only select people, very select people are allowed to do that. In beach cricket, who cares if somebody drops out or isn't there? The game just goes on. Whereas, of course, in finite game of Test cricket, every player has a role and must stick to their role. When we're playing beach cricket, anything can come out of it. We don't know how this game is going to end. Somebody might do something crazy with the ball, it might go in the water. A little kid might come along, or a dog might come along and take the ball over to the other end of the beach. All of that's okay. It doesn't assume it's going to be the same as yesterday's game. Of course, with Test cricket, all the players try and replicate the winning strategies of the past. They study them, they practice for them, their coach drills them into them. And so that what they're trying to do actually is be master players who can in fact know the future before it has happened. Because the ultimate finite player knows the outcome. Uncertainty is a threat to that player. Of course, beach cricket, you get a 3-year-old kid comes along, they don't actually have to hit the ball in order to be able to run. You get a 18-year-old woman who's learning physical education at university, she has to hit it really hard and people really try and get her out. So the rules keep changing. Of course, with Test cricket, it would be completely bizarre to say halfway through the game, oh, we're going to change the rules now. Yeah, that's just ridiculous, doesn't happen. So in beach cricket, what we're getting constantly is creativity. We're getting something different, something new, something we don't know or can't predict. What we're getting in Test cricket is basically replication. Either New Zealand or Australia wins, but same old, same old. Now, other finite games, hopefully you get the hang of the metaphor, other finite games include owning property. You get a trophy, you get to keep it, it's yours, you won, yay, good on you. Get a degree, get funding for a program, publish an article, get a promotion. Those are some of the finite games that all of us, many of us, are playing. Now, one other characteristic of these games that I want to point out is that finite games can exist within the infinite game. So, to go back to our cricket metaphor, you might have a moment where maybe you've got 2 18-year-old women that are actually pretty good at it, and they have a little finite game between themselves to see who can do the most runs. But it's all within the context of the infinite game. Finite games can exist outside it though. They can be things that they're doing for their own sake and not in service of this bigger infinite game. Now, finite games aren't necessarily bad because finite games preserve us, they give us resources, things that we can hold on to when we need some of those. We have to be cautious though about the ones that are ultimately just for our own ends. Because the thing about these games, at the sort of psychological and social level, is that in some sense finite games are doomed. Because what finite games do is they try and build around us our trophies, our possessions, our degrees, our funding, our whatever it is. And we all know we're going to die. It's the bottom line of human life. And so all of that sort of big empire that we've built around us isn't going to protect us. It doesn't actually protect that fragile ego from ultimately dissolving. And they create a kind of a clinging, a closure, a stopping. Whereas what the infinite game does is now no longer matters, even death doesn't matter. Because if you're invested in the infinite game, you just want it to continue, and it's not about you, it's about the game itself. Now, one of the things that strikes me really obviously about this is being in the sustainability field generally, I think the infinite game is a much cooler way to think about what we're trying to do than sustainability, because this is what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to keep the game in play. Simple as that. Another few reasons why I like this metaphor. I love the idea of being in a game. Like life is so kind of scarily serious that a game makes it a little bit of fun. And we use game language quite a bit, stage language, all of those kinds of things. I've also found now that I'm thinking in these modes that it makes sense of an awful lot around me. If I am finding somebody really frustrating, I don't know what they're trying to do at a meeting, for example, I think to myself, are they playing a finite game here? Sometimes I can say, yeah, they are. I don't quite understand what trophy they're after, but that's why this isn't working. So I'm finding it a really powerful metaphor in my own life. And I also like the fact that it can be made into an actual game. That's what we're going to do a little taste of in a second. In fact, it's a game within a game. And as I was kind of practicing this back in Auckland, my daughter overheard that. She said, oh, just like Inception. I said, yeah, it's like Inception, movie. Games within games. That's what it's all about. So we're going to play a little bit of it now. Just a tiny dose. I want you to think that which is of infinite value to you personally. Now, what do I mean by that? I'm really hoping that I can take you through this so I don't have to give you an example. That which is of infinite value you might think of as sacred, precious, special. You might think of it as a value for its own sake. It's not a means to an end. There might be an end, but the means is just as important. It's that which makes the world truly alive, truly growing and changing. It can be in any dimension. It can be an emotion, a relationship, part of the natural world, a quality of some kind, or an object. Do you think you get it? Think you get it? Okay. Could I have the house lights, please? Thanks. Okay. What I'd like you to do is have in your mind one word. One word. And I think we can get everyone's word. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a ripple poem. Starting Cora. Oh, it doesn't matter. You don't want to start. Starting it over here somewhere. Whoever's willing with their word. Okay. Just hold your word for a sec. And we're going to ripple along here, going like this along rows. Now, if you don't want to say a word, can you very quickly make it clear by moving on to the next person? Okay? Just so that we can keep this poem moving really, really quickly. Now, if you can have a big, loud voice, that would be great. But if you've got a small voice, that's okay. We don't mind. You might not hear everyone. So let's just... most people got words? Yeah, great. Okay. Okay, as loud as you can. Don't worry.
Grandfather.
Family.
Bonding.
Dizzy.
Relationship. Child. Kids.
Adler.
Music. Connection.
Love. Family.
Happiness. Love.
Well-being.
Kindness. Grace. Force. Community.
Knucklehead.
Justice.
Family. Compassion. Food.
Vulnerability. River. Forest.
Ocean. Child. Love. Music. Peace. Elephant.
Creativity. Interconnection. Resilience. Children. Love. Crazy. Child. Love. Old day.
Curiosity. Community.
Lizards. Freedom. Hope. Happiness. Burger. Love. Dogs. Hopeful.
Music. Love. Conviction. Connection.
Relationship. Happiness. Children. Love.
Computers.
Family. Love. Relationship. Respect. Collaboration. World. Love. Sustainability. Family.
Density.
Health. Safety.
Friendships. Curiosity. That was my word. Society. Relationships. Family. Forest. Love. No.
Family. Trust.
Relationships. Love.
Peace. Safety.
Love. Passion. Love. Yeah.
Love.
Trust.
Equity.
Flowers.
Ocean. Concern. Forgiveness. Compassion. Grace. Education.
Light.
Hope.
Family.
Conversation. Love. Gratitude.
Culture. Art.
Unafraid.
Patience.
Love. Water.
Relief.
The end. Cooperation.
Humor. Connection.
Wonder. Family.
Plastic. Curiosity.
Sandwich.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic. Thank you. We can have the lights back to where they were and then that's beautiful. Whenever I've done this, I've done it about The most common word is love. And I'm just going to run very, very quickly through some slides that show a course that I'm involved with where we tried it in different student groups. I'm just going to give them without comment. Where you see little overlaps, that's when people have said the same thing. The colours don't mean anything. Toilet paper, you always get it. Okay, so I kind of have this feeling that no matter where you go or who you're with, we actually all feel that it's the same things that we want to keep in play. And actually, I need the lights back again. Sorry, I probably should have just left them there. The house lights, please. Okay, so what I want to do now, some of you have got paper darts. I want to imagine that we're playing the infinite game. And those paper darts represent some of the beautiful words that you put in. Love, family, hope, sandwich, all of those things. And we're going to be playing, what we're going to do, we're only going to play for about 1 minute, is I want you to just fire off your darts. If you get a dart, pick it up. You might have to lean over a bit and throw it to someone else. Don't worry if your dart does nosedive, we're not worried. Some of these things will die and be lost. That's the nature of life. So let's just play with the darts for a minute. If you are close to a dart, can you just pick it up? And we're going to play a different game now. You need to listen carefully because this game's got rules. The object of this game is to win. There can be only one winner. The winner is the person with the most number of darts in their hand. There's more rules though. You cannot get out of your seat. You cannot grab a dart from somebody else. Okay? We're going to play this game for 30 seconds, starting now. Okay, that's about 40 seconds. Great. Thank you. I hope I don't need to spell out, but I will anyway. What happened when we moved from an infinite game strategy to a finite game strategy? We all held on to our darts. Has anyone got two? You are the winner. Okay. You've got the two darts. All the rest of us, in fact, all of us are immobilised, even you with your two darts. Because that's what the finite games is about, is holding on to, retaining, stasis, almost a kind of a death. Now, what does this mean for psychology in general, and community psychology in particular? How can we keep the infinite game in play? Well, I don't think it's any good for us. Sorry, we'll change the lights back again. I mean, I don't mind them being on, but you know, now it's going to be me blah 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 until the end. Apart from where we sit, best part. You can't have marvellous schemes that you impose on the community. I know you all know that, but lots of people don't. You don't hope that people will behave as you expect. Hope that they will behave as you don't expect. Put an injection in there and wait for some kind of creative response. We need to trust people to bring about this flourishing planet and flourishing world. Thank you, if we just promote this creativity. Think about whether our institutions are set up for finite or infinite games, the kind of structure that we have within them. This, I think, is the infinite game that universities are charged with. Community of learners, because we're all learners or else we're not in it, are we? Community of learners seeking understanding but never quite finding it. Seeking growth, seeking innovation with permeable boundaries, something community psychologists understand well. And so within that infinite game structure of universities, we can have finite games. And I've put up some finite games here that I think are ultimately in service of those infinite games. But we all, maybe not all, I'll use an I statement here, but I play some finite games that are outside that structure. So I know for a fact they exist because I play them. Publishing, for the sake of publishing. Going on about, well actually I don't go on about university rankings, but plenty of people do at my university, you better cut that out of the video. Achieving a degree in order to qualify for a high-paying job. So what we're trying to do in the university is we're trying to stay in the infinite game. And whatever we do within that, it's actually really, really simple. It's not actually complicated, do your hidden stuff, like climate change and injustice, all those issues, of course, which I completely believe in. But we don't have to know them or understand them. We just have to keep what is precious in play in whatever way we can, in whatever field we're in. So, teaching our students about these metaphors, writing for audiences as broad as possible. The more narrowly and complexly we write, the more we exclude rather than include and bring people into the game. If you want to work at the higher political level, and I think again all of us do, think about the metaphors needed to pull us forward. Be really careful in your languaging and in your appeals. In the sustainability field I work in, there's lots of debates at home, probably here too, about whether you should say things like there's money in being green. Some people think you should appeal to business by saying you can make money out of trying to reduce climate change. Talk about one step forward, 20 steps back. Buying into that metaphor, is that really keeping what is precious in play? Can't we be braver with what we do? Now, I may or may not have convinced you about the infinite game metaphor, but I do want to just remind you of the amazing power of metaphor and symbol and myth in reaching into us, helping us understand ourselves, helping us understand the world we live in, and helping us give a GPS for the way things. I think these are two really interesting cultural productions. I think they both come out of good country, which I'm not going to go into, but I think they're very interesting. And we are now going to sing for you. In Māori tradition, you sing a waiata or a song at the end of a speech. And so I'd like the people that are going to do it, along with me, to come up now and we will sing you our waiata. And so if we could have the house lights, please. We would love you to join in. There is a really simple chorus. This is all phonetically spelled for what it's worth. You probably find that. The chorus is just e, I, e. Hopefully you can get that. Should we have a little practice? E, I, e. So as you feel comfortable, feel really free to sing the whole song, but in particular we'd love to hear your voices for that part of it. However, this is fabulous. So, can we have it? Do you want me to click it? Is this going to work?
Fast.
Yeah.
Let's hear it for Nick.